Does everybody have intuitive and or psychic abilities?
In my opinion, I believe yes. I believe it's as natural as breathing. I just believe that we've forgotten. If we look to children, they're going to tell us everything. I remember I was babysitting the most extraordinary 6-year-old, and she actually walked me next to her plant, told me we were going into a portal, and when we left the portal, we would be in a completely different world. And so she took me into this portal. She said, take a deep breath, and we entered this new world. And then we played a game in it. We were imagining, playing around. She's taking me around the house. I was following. And then we went back into the portal and came back home. And I thought, no one's taught her that. And it was so natural for her. And so I think if we look to children, we'll realize who we truly are. And if we look to where we are now, we can see that gap of how far we've gotten from who we truly are.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Ask Julie Ryan Show. It's where we blend spirituality and practicality to help you live a life of purpose and joy. We have Victoria Pippo on the show with us today. As a former professional Disney princess and now multidimensional healer, Victoria assists people with their psychic development. I'm going to be asking Victoria about her techniques and how she connects to spirits. Please remember to subscribe, leave a comment, and share this episode with your family and friends. Now, let's go chat with Victoria. Victoria, I'm so thrilled to have you on this show. Welcome, girl.
Thanks, Julie. I'm happy to be here.
Oh my gosh, what a delight to have you join us. Before we started recording, we were talking about what you used to do in your past life. Can you fill everybody in a little bit about that?
Yes, so I've just spent the last 5 minutes singing Disney songs with Julie Ryan here because I was a professional performer since the age of 7 years old.
Yeah, and she was a Disney princess, you guys. She played all of them, and she was even Mary Poppins. Can you see that? I mean, look at her. You look like Mary Poppins.
What am I giving, guys? What's my vibe?
Yeah, exactly. And so, did you have a favorite character that you played?
Well, I felt the most connected to Elsa. I think that goes maybe without saying because she had powers and she felt ostracized. She felt like she didn't belong. So I felt connected to her on a spiritual level, but Belle is a classic. And I just think she was one of the first classic princesses that pushed the edge and said, I want adventure. I want to be me. I don't want to do what's been done before. And I really respect that in her. So I would say Belle.
Well, and Angela Lansbury, who I loved, was Mrs. Potts. And she just, when she would sing in The Beauty and the Beast, oh my goodness, I just get full body goosebumps.
You would laugh to know that I actually played Mrs. Potts because on the Disney ships, they have 30 to 40 cast members that we have to spread across the shows. And I was in a full Mrs. Potts outfit. I swear it was like a 20-pound giant bowl I was like walking in. And so I actually played Mrs. Potts.
Did you sing Be Our Guest?
Yeah, I think I started with the It's Our Guest, It's Our Guest. Sakes alive and I'll be blessed. Something like that. Yeah, I did, but only that little part of the song.
Oh gosh, I just love her. Did you have a Belle song that you wanted to share with us?
I would love to share. I'll sing maybe just like a little bit of the bridge, if that's okay.
Sure.
Oh, isn't this amazing? It's my favorite part because you'll see here's where she meets Prince Charming, but she won't discover that it's him till chapter 3. I want adventure in the great wide somewhere. I want it more than I can tell. And for once it might be grand to have someone understand. I want so much more than they've got planned.
Oh my God, I have full body chills. Oh, that was fabulous. Thank you for humoring us.
Thank you
with
for
your
receiving.
talents.
I must be the first who's ever sang a song from Disney on your podcast, maybe.
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
I love that.
I love Disney. And I had a woman as a guest on the show a few months ago named Tanis Hellowell. You'll be interested to hear this. And she works with elementals.
Cool.
And she and I got into a conversation about how Walt Disney incorporated so many elementals into his movies. The Little Mermaid, Tinker Bell, all these other characters, the elves, the seven dwarfs, all of that. And so Walt Disney came in during that conversation. And
Wow.
I said, I wonder if that was part of his life's work, his spirit's work, to keep all of that alive, because certainly Disney gets a new generation each year, and those stories and those songs and all of those tales that we think are fairy tales, but they're all based on reality,
Yes.
according to what Tanis says. I just thought that was amazing.
I think that is beautiful. And as someone who has worked behind the scenes of the Disney company, what you feel that's being presented is exactly how we are trained to serve the Disney message. We actually go through this process called earning your ears. And we spend an entire weekend actually learning about the history of Walt, the history of how Mortimer Mouse turned into Mickey Mouse, the process of all the rejection that Walt went through to build what he had built, and what we have to uphold in order to be a part of the Disney company. Being able to maintain the integrity of the characters, being able to serve the characters' stories, read their energies, and help to really keep the magic alive. And so, as someone who's had access to behind the scenes, I would not be surprised if he was here to weave imagination and belief through the consciousness of course, the youth, but I also think it's for the adults, because something heals in us to be able to experience that magic, even if it's just for a little bit of time.
Absolutely. Well, Frozen 2 is one of my all-time favorite movies. I think I've seen it 6 or 7 times. It's so spiritual, and every time I watch it, I think this is for the adults as much as for the kids, and it gets that message across. And the other thing that I love to watch with Frozen 2 is if you have the Disney streaming channel,
Yes.
they have a documentary on how it was made. And this is a billion-dollar movie, and they were still rewriting the script a month out.
Wow.
And it was so, I believe, divinely inspired when I watch it. Every time I watch it, I see something new. So thank you for humoring me on that.
Thank you for allowing me to.
Absolutely. How does that play into you being involved in woo-woo now as a career? I mean, certainly as a child performer, were you doing only Disney stuff, or what? How did that all come about?
Yeah, that's exactly how I weave in my story. Is having been a child performer since I was 7 years old, I was singing Cheetah Girls, Celine Dion. It didn't matter what it was. I was finding songs that were hip at the time, and I was performing them in competitions from a really young age. I believe that my mother knew that I had something different, something unique. And a lot of times, if we're blessed with parents who support that mission, we usually go into art. And so I went into singing, I went into acting, I went into performance from a very young age. And that followed me all the way to living in New York City in my early 20s with 17 agent offers, post out of college, pursuing my life's career as an actor. And so right out of the gate, I booked Elsa with Disney Cruise Line for a 9-month contract. I went and pursued that. It was beautiful. I hadn't had my spiritual awakening at that time, but I had had a history of addictive patterns, being a high performer. Of course, it connects, being a child performer, wanting to succeed from a very young age with a big dream, a big imagination, that creating different habits that were not necessarily of service to me. Also, relational patterns of my childhood that really wove into how I was behaving in intimate relationships. I finished my contract with Disney. I got another contract just about 6 months after the conclusion of that contract prior. It was for Mary Poppins, and I accepted the contract. And when I got there, I went through a pretty catastrophic relationship that ended, that then really sparked my spiritual awakening. It made me realize that I was the common denominator in my life, that I was different and unique and yet perpetuating that story in unhealthy ways. And that started my spiritual awakening, this realization that I was creating my reality and that I needed to be the one that changed. So this happened around 2019. That was the spark of my spiritual awakening. It led me to meditation as medicine to try to cope with being anxious, being anxiously attached, fearing abandonment, and ultimately having a reactive relationship ultimately to life. And from there, that's when I started to connect with spirit.
How do you have a relationship with somebody if you're on a 9-month cruise?
Yeah, good question. Would love to tell you. It didn't work very well.
Yeah, I bet not.
No, it didn't. And I believe that I knew it wasn't going to work out, but I also, again, to the point about abandonment, I was afraid of letting go, but I also knew that holding on was also not the right choice either. And at that time, I didn't know what my intuition was. I could feel it. I didn't know what it was. And so I technically, I guess, if you will, I overrode my intuition. And then we know what happens when we don't do that. When we do that, then a lesson comes. And mine just happened to be the catalyst to my awakening.
When you were singing those Disney princess songs and acting as those characters, do you believe you were channeling some energy? And where did that energy come from? What was the energy you were channeling?
So absolutely, I would say now in hindsight, I would say I was always a channel. I was always imagining from a very young age. I think my clairvoyance was online from a very young age, around 2-3 years old. Now that I've had my awakening, I connected the dots with the first spirit I connected with, which was my grandfather, my mother's father who passed. And she told me at 2-3 years old that I was speaking to him and saying that he was in the room. So I believe that my clairvoyance stayed open. It just turned into taking a character, feeling them on such a clairsentient level, seeing them so vividly, and then processing that through the script. And so I do think I was always channeling. I think that I also found a lot of my healing simultaneously through these characters because I could play these roles that had maybe better stories, better endings. They had power, they had good lives. And in contrast to the life I grew up in, I think I found healing simultaneous to the continuation of what I think is now my really open spiritual connection.
We have a graduate of my angelic attendant training who's a Broadway star.
Love it.
And she, years ago, played June Carter Cash. She starred as June Carter Cash on Broadway. And for the show, she went out into the audience for about 20 minutes and did part of the show in the audience. And she talks about how she didn't remember what she did when she was out there. She said, I know I was channeling June Carter Cash. She said, I'd go back up on stage and I'd remember what my lines were and stuff for the next scene. But she said I was silently praying, going, oh, please, I hope it went well. And I hope the audience enjoyed it because she honestly did not remember it. Did you ever experience something like that?
Not necessarily in my work. I would say that I would leave the stage and feel exhilarated, lit up, so connected. Not necessarily completely forgetful of the experience, but definitely feeling like something was tapped into. And uniquely enough, since I was a young age, my mom would have many encounters with other parents, different teachers who would say, there's something different. She has this presence. She connects to something different. And even though they didn't understand what that was, I believe I adopted that energy and I had this presence because my vibration was light and big from such a young age that they just thought, wow, what a present person. But I think I was just always kind of tapped in.
Do you come from a spiritual family?
No.
Tell us about that.
So on my father's side, I do come from a family of artists, which I think there's definitely correlation there, but they have not pursued their spiritual connection in actually channeling, connecting with divine spirits, nothing of that nature. But
artists as in painters or?
My Nona was a designer and also quite a great singer. My father is able to pick up an instrument and basically learn it instantly and was really a very good entertainer. And so I kind of wove in, I think, from my Italian lineage, a little bit more of that exuberance, flamboyance, and deep connection to art and music and being able to have a natural gift. My mom's side is more so the resilience, the ones who have navigated a lot of martyrdom through my lineage, a lot of challenges around sacrifice. I believe if they had healed and come into their full natural connection, I believe that they would have been very, very, very powerful conduits and channelers. They just didn't in this life, as of right now, come into that full expression.
I love Italian names.
Victoria Pippo.
Because they're so melodic.
Yeah.
You got Mendocino and Gallo and God, I grew up with so many Italians, Papagallo and la la la, and then you got Ryan. Yeah. You got, Pippo and Masticcioli and rigatoni and, all these things. Lasagna. I'm thinking of the food groups now. But then I think, so much of Italy and the Italian heritage is so melodic. The art, the architecture, the language, all of that is almost like it's a melodic flow of energy through all of that.
Yes.
Yeah, I understand what you're talking about. You've alluded a couple of times, Victoria, to your spiritual awakening. Can you give us kind of the summary of that? Give us the cliff notes of what happened and where you were and the details?
So I was in my cabin meditating every day. I would play Mary Poppins. I'd have my full face of makeup on in between shows, and I would meditate. There was something about meditation. At first, of course, there was resistance, but then it started to become something that felt like a need. In the same way that you would, get ready for the day and use your actual human hygiene. It felt like a spiritual hygiene ritual that I needed. And so one day I was in meditation, and around this time I started to get deeper into meditations. I would have 45-minute meditations, listening to just different guided meditations, and I would come out and go, oh, I just had a whole experience. I could see everything. I could go into exactly where they were guiding me, and it was taking this different turn that felt really special, but I didn't have the internet because the Wi-Fi was not great. I didn't have any other psychics around me, so I didn't know how to put it together. Long story short, I was in a meditation one day, and I felt this unbelievable presence of unconditional love. And over the last few weeks preceding that, there was this breath of air on the left side of my body that started to become really predominant. And so I tried to test it. I would be in my cabin, I'd go meditate in different places, but that air would keep following. And what the heck was that? Finally, in this meditation, I'm connected to this feeling of unconditional love. I feel this breath of air on the left side of my body, and this voice comes through and says, I am your grandfather. I am one of your spirit guides, and I've been with you your entire life. Just as clear as you and I are having this conversation as I know you know. And I'm like, oh. And then I get this smell of campfire through my nose, which should be concerning because I'm in the middle of the ocean and I'm smelling fire. I'm like, oh my God. I opened my eyes. Obviously, we were okay. But I thought, what was that? So I ran upstairs, finally got a little bit of service, and I called my mom because, like I shared before, that was my mom's dad. And I said, did I ever tell you that I talked to Grandpa? And she said, oh yeah, 2-3 years old. You would always say, Grandpa's here, Grandpa's here. And I said, did he ever live on one side of my body? Because I was trying to connect that breath of air on that left side. And she said, yeah, you would point up to me, to the left side of my body and say, Grandpa's here, he's right on the left side. So now I'm having I said, what about campfire? Does that have any correlation? Why would I smell campfire? She says, that is the fondest memory that I have of my father before he passed. We would go camping every year. And that is truly how I remember my dad. Now that was the moment that was it's the mind-blowing moment where you realize, whoa, I'm onto something. What was that? Now I'm trying to connect all the dots together. And that catalyzed my spiritual awakening. At first piercing through the dimensional veil that is now, 6 years later, become my life.
And he was deceased when you were born, it sounds like.
Yes.
Wow. How long before you were born?
So my mom was 12.
Oh, long time.
Long time. I knew nothing about him. I had no preconceived connection with him whatsoever. I knew nothing about him.
What do you think the wind or the breeze on the left side of your body, and it signifies, and do you still get it?
I don't get it anymore with him because we're no longer in a soul agreement. So when I transcended certain lessons, he left. But sometimes if I'm asking for certain clarifications from my guides, I'll ask them to amplify that presence. And I believe that they use that left side of my body because it's so visceral and it's something that connects my mind and my emotion. Because I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that feeling. That connected me to my grandfather. And so I do think it's a part of your clairsentient abilities, but for me, it clarified a presence. In the same way that if someone walked past me with intention, I would feel the wind beside me. I feel like it clarified a presence in my life, and it's still with me, just not his presence as a spirit guide.
Do your current spirit guides use other tactile or kinesthetic signs or indicators for you to let you know that they're present?
Yes, so most of the ways I connect with them now is more so through really significant visceral shivers. So shivers, tingles, depending on what guide I'm working with, sometimes I get like visceral movements, very clairaudience. So from that time he came through, clairaudience has been one of the stronger abilities that help me as I'm channeling. So clairaudience, they're like, one, the way that they come through, I hear them, but then how they feel and I get the shivers. That's usually how I work with connecting with each of my three guides that I work with.
So are you an auditory learner?
No.
Is that your primary way that you learn?
No, actually, as a performer, I would read a script once and memorize it.
Okay, so you're a visual learner.
Yeah.
But auditory obviously is very strong for you with that voice you have.
Yeah. I mean, I had a hard time harmonizing actually with others. I would find that if you were singing a note and I was meant to sing this note, I would always try to jump up to your note. Like it was hard for me to kind of hold my own energy, which makes a lot of sense now because I have been so empathetic my whole life. But I actually found that the auditory experience just moved me. Like if you put me in a symphony, I'm in there. I am the flute, I am the violin. I become so immersed. However, that challenge when I was in singing and I was singing, musicals with other people, that became actually quite a challenge for me.
Interesting. All right. So you had your spiritual awakening, and that was that you knew that was your grandfather, and you knew that he was giving you a tactile, a kinesthetic sign that he was there. I mean, where did you take it from there?
Well, the day I got off the cruise ship was the day that the world shut down. So March 13th, 2020 was the day I got off the cruise ship. So I obviously had some integration to do because we were quite isolated in terms of what was going on in the world. And so I stepped out off the cruise ship and thought, oh, this is when my awakening is going to start. Like the real integration.
So you weren't stuck out in a harbor like those cruise ships in the port of LA. You got off in Florida or someplace?
I literally got off the day that the next cast came in and got stuck on the ship.
Oh, goodness.
So I felt like that was a gift from God, truthfully.
Absolutely.
I needed that time to now finally immerse myself with Wi-Fi, with other people who were doing this work. I needed to know what had happened spiritually and connect with other people. And so from here, this is when I started to work with divination tools. So I was guided to the perfect tarot deck for me. And I started to learn, study tarot, study oracle, understand those more physical confirmations that allowed me to build a little bit of that confidence because absolutely I was feeling quite insecure. I didn't have a roadmap, no guidance around me necessarily to support me with this awakening I had had. And so tarot and oracle really helped me build my inner assurity with my guides that what I was doing was true. So that was kind of like next step from there. My meditations kept getting deeper and I was now going deeper and channeling different beings instead of just, my spirit team. I started to work with different extraterrestrial life forms. And like, that was like a whole other kind of growth. But that all happened 2020, 2021.
All right, let's back up for a minute. What's the difference between tarot cards and oracle cards?
My understanding of the difference between tarot cards and oracle cards is oracle cards represent the future, or at least themes of the future, whereas tarot cards for me represented present energy, more nuance to what's going on in my energy in the moment. Also, it was more connected to astrology. So the different major arcanas representing a different constellation. And so I got to study astrology through learning the tarot, which was amazing. Understood my birth chart, basically starting to understand myself. But I used oracle as a confirmation for what's to come, whereas I used the tarot as a medium to connect with my present energy.
Can anybody use tarot cards and oracle cards? I've never used them. I know what they are. I mean, I've seen people use them. I've never used them, but can anybody do it? Or do you have to have had a spiritual awakening and have a high vibration in order for them to be accurate or legitimate?
Well, I'm glad that you asked if it was going to be accurate or legitimate, because these are the tools and the resources that I now offer people as more of a psychic protection educator, which is something that took me many years to get to, but that's the work I do now. I believe that anybody can grab a tarot or an oracle deck, shuffle some cards around and see what spits out and say, this was my message. However, to work with them as an extension of your vibration, to make sure that they stay clear, to keep them in the most purified energy as possible, to not become dependent on them, to not rely on them as a source of connection. These are some of the more tricky, and I think a lot more of the traps, because then people use the cards to validate, but never get to the point where they can self-validate or build a strong enough connection with their own clair abilities so that they don't need them. Thankfully, I grew out of them. I don't use them anymore. However, when used accurately, I think they're a helpful right bridge for those who are trying to get confirmation with the spirit world, but they should only be a bridge, not a place to land.
I'm glad you mentioned the kind of an addiction thing. I have a colleague, Suzanne Wilson, whom I just adore. She is just magnificent, and she's a medium. She's known as the carefree medium. And she works with a lot of people who are grieving the loss of a loved one. And she has very strict parameters about, I will only work with you, like once a year or twice a year. I forget what it is. But I said to her, well, they can go to somebody else. She said, that's fine. But she said it's been her experience that when somebody loses a loved one, that they can get really dependent on mediums in order to communicate with their loved ones. And she said, I don't want to be a part of that because I think it keeps them stuck in their grief. And I'm hearing the same thing out of you as far as with the oracle cards and the tarot cards.
That's exactly it. And I believe that the beauty of mediumship is it allows us to understand this reality, to heal, to come to conclusions about things. And I believe that it can bring in a certain type of person where some aspect of their healing can become dependent on someone else, if not understood that a human emotion should be healed by the human person. And the medium should help bring truth, clarity, resolution in some way, not to try to process emotion. That's what a therapist is for. That's what your own work, your own shadow work, your own healing is for. And so a medium should help bring truth. And I believe that's at least what I'm gathering from this amazing person you work with, is that they want them to come for the truth and they want them to do their own healing separately instead of building that, ultimately, that loop in dependency that is their work to do, not the medium's responsibility. That's a big thing I work on.
And I think that mediums, and I do a lot of this too, where people want to talk to their deceased loved ones, oftentimes soon after they've passed. And the number one question is, are they okay? I'm like, they're in heaven. It's fabulous. Yes, they're all fine. And then the second question is, do they have a message for me? And so, of course, they always do. It may not be what they're looking to hear, but I always say, you can't control what spirit says any more than you could control what they said when they were alive. It's the same kind of a thing. And research shows that, especially early in grief situations, that being able to communicate with a deceased loved one, if it's through a medium or however, it does really help the grieving process
Yes.
because it lets them know that their loved one is still around them.
Mhm.
And it's just that they're in a different form now.
Mhm.
Have you found that to be the case?
Yes, absolutely. And there have been beautiful times where I've been able to bring messages through from my grandfather, but also my grandmother passed almost coming up to 3 years now. It was very, very, very challenging for my mother, of course, as it would be for anybody to lose a parent, both her parents at this time now. And so to be able to bring forward messages from my grandmother, it does bring resolve. But again, that healing is our personal responsibility. But if we can support that conclusion, that resolve, even just that temporary, if you will, feeling of relief, then I think it's a gift.
I agree.
When used wisely, right? It's like we don't get gifts every day, but we get gifts when we can receive it. We get gifts when it's timing, and we get gifts when it's of service.
I agree. Does everybody have intuitive and or psychic abilities?
In my opinion, I believe yes. I believe it's as natural as breathing. I just believe that we've forgotten.
I
So
agree.
if we look to children, they're going to tell us everything. They tell
Yep.
us everything about what it means to be in our natural state of being. And I've personally never met a child that did not have a wicked imagination that was really them just seeing in all the different dimensions. And they were playing in this realm. I remember I was babysitting the most extraordinary 6-year-old, and she actually walked me next to her plant, told me we were going into a portal. And when we left the portal, we would be in a completely different world. And so she took me into this portal. She said, take a deep breath. And we entered this new world. And then we played a game in it. We were imagining, playing around. She's taking me around the house. I was following. And then we went back into the portal and came back home. And I thought, no one's taught her that. No one
Yeah.
taught her that. Soon after, she was meditating with me. Her hands were like in the mudra and her eyes were closed and she was breathing. And she said, okay, I'm going to go to my new world now. I said, what do you mean? What do you mean you're going to your new world? Like, what? And it was so natural for her. And so I think if we look to children, we'll realize who we truly are. And if we look to where we are now, we can see that gap of how far we've gotten from who we truly are.
I completely agree. 100%. And it's all, they get it. And it's been my experience that they start shut it down at about the age of 6 or 7. Have you found that to be the case?
Yes, because majority of our conditioning is formed around that time. And that's also the time where our solar plexus is developed. So this is now when we're no longer attaching our aura just to, our stuffy or our princesses. Now we're starting to engage with the world. And now when we get the feedback loop of the world, well, society is not necessarily saying, wow, you're psychic or you can connect. That's so cool. It's Santa's not real. This is when we break the news to our children. The tooth fairy wasn't real. They're now being engaged in school and they're going through hormonal, emotional, mental changes, stress that they didn't have before. And so the way that at least the education system creates people, they really create the employees of the world, not necessarily the employers or those that feel empowered or connected to their own sense of self and belonging. And so I think it's this indoctrination usually starting around that time where we're entering school and we're actually starting to really receive the feedback loop of wanting to be accepted, wanting to be understood, wanting to belong while we're developing our sense of self, that I think it's just naturally conditioned out of us because it's not cool or it doesn't fit in.
Well, or the person with whom we're speaking doesn't see what we see.
Exactly.
And so they tell us it's our imagination and it isn't real. And their little friends say, there ain't anybody there. You're just weird. And then they shut it down. I agree. Why do people block their intuition? And how can they unblock it?
Well, I think to the point about earlier, I believe that we are all intuitive. We all have these connections. We know naturally when something is good, when something is not good, when something feels good, when something doesn't feel good, especially Children are a great example of this. There's no film or filter between I'm happy to I'm sad, or I'm happy to I'm having a tantrum. There's no film. It's just 0 to 100. And while that's not necessarily intuition, it's definitely a connection to yourself. And your connection to what feels right, doesn't feel right, feels wrong, what doesn't feel wrong. I believe around that age, around 6, 7, that's when the conditioning starts. And over time, when we want society's approval, when we want to belong, when we want to understand how to deal with, hormonal, mental, emotional, societal changes. I feel like it's quite quick amount of time between 7 and 13 years old. Like there's quite a lot of significant shifts on a hormonal, emotional, mental level that happens because we're being introduced into society while we're going through lots of changes. And so I believe that that is when we stop trusting ourselves and we start trusting what other people tell us more. And I think that's the first sign of blocking, being more disconnected from our own intuition, is letting someone else, our teachers, our parents, of course, at that time, it's important. Our parents are meant to be our protectors, right? So they are kind of reflecting back to us our own intuition. But then over time, that can really calcify our ability to trust ourselves. I think that's where it starts, letting the world or needing the world to tell us who we are and then going, yeah, maybe that is right. Or our friends say, that's what we want to do today. And you say, well, okay, well, I want to fit in, so maybe I will. So slowly, I think over time, we stop trusting that feeling that we have that tells us really what our compass is, what's good, what's the next step, what's right for us. And then how do we unblock it? In my experience, because of course, I think all paths ultimately lead home. And home is to your own heart, your own connection to yourself as a psychic, spirit, divine being. I think the best way to unblock it, in my experience, has been through stillness, through meditation. So the simple act of sitting in discomfort and just starting to listen, quieting the noise, quieting the external confusion or feedback loop of the world, that allows you to start to feel your own patterns and notice them and connect the dots. And then over time, reprogram. Wait, that was actually taught to me by a friend. Why do I always go back to that story? Why am I always, stressed about that thing? And then the more that you give yourself permission to breathe through that, let it go, then slowly it's almost like I'm seeing like the image of like peeling open a banana. It's like then you kind of open up back to what is your true self, which is naturally intuitive, naturally able to feel your own compass and ultimately to follow it.
Do children that grow up in abusive homes learn to mistrust themselves at an earlier age? And how does that affect addiction and other life patterns? And why do some children who grow up in abusive homes, they don't really go through that? They seem to be, are they more advanced souls? What's going on with that?
Well, I think there's something to be said about karma and how karma plays a role in...
What's karma to you?
Karma is the consequence of your actions, both as a soul and your free will. So you get to choose, and then the choices create the consequences, both on a positive or negative reaction. And if you don't complete whatever your soul came here to complete, you'll just kind of come back, but kind of like a slug, carry all that information, both positive and negative, that you didn't necessarily come to conclusion about. So karma is almost like recycling your consequences. That's my understanding of karma. And as someone who did grow up in an abusive household, who also then adopted quite addictive patterns, karma, I think, brings more complexity to the life dynamic that you incarnate with. Not always, but a lot of the time. I work with very advanced spirits that have a lot of karma that they're here to clear, to restore, to heal. And a lot of times they grow up in very complex homes.
How can you tell somebody is an advanced spirit? What's an advanced spirit? How can you tell?
For me, I can tell an advanced spirit based on how much challenge they go through on a spiritual level. So not necessarily life challenge, although those are obviously connected, but about their mission, their purpose, their inner fortitude, their resilience. They just got a little something different than others. There's this almost this inner urgency or this driver to accomplish something unheard of, something different. And even if they don't know it's spiritually connected yet, it's in them. And so that's my personal feeling when I think about someone who is an advanced soul, really connected to something bigger than them. And they feel that sense of urgency about what that is. And their life challenges are really intricate and really nuanced in a way that, an average earth soul who's just, maybe here a few incarnations is just kind of getting their footing. We're like, been there, done that, and it just feels more deep.
Can you give us an example of that?
Yeah. So, for example, my spirit is quite an advanced spirit. I know that my soul in this life wants to be clear of my major negative karma. So I call that interference in my world. Interference to me is anything that is impacting the full expression of my soul in its purest, truest, most organic form. So in some past lives, I had different lessons that I didn't heal. And so I came back, right, to try to master that lesson. And then I didn't complete that lesson. And then I came back. It's like a callus. My energy became quite callous because I kept trying to come back and master that lesson. Inside of my lineage, there's a lot of really tough challenges in my bloodline around power, gifts, influence, and that bled through, almost carrying through my lineage. And so when I manifested in this physical form, I also brought through that generational interference. And so I kind of came on earth with all this past life stuff where I'm so close to mastering my spiritual power, but I don't complete my lessons. And then I reincarnate once again. And then all this generational interference where people in my lineage have incarnated trying to master this particular lesson, trying to heal, trying to clear the bloodline, and couldn't. And so I have in this life. I'm the closest I've ever been to myself as a free spirit because I've done the work to work with really advanced energy healers to understand my lessons, understand my spirit, and push through the soil of my growth and keep moving forward so I can be who I came here to be. So that's an example of an advanced spirit. Like I've done a lot of interference work because my soul has had a lot of pretty significant challenges. And through advanced energy healers, through my own then crawling with that, now I am, in my personal opinion, the expression of what my true soul came here to be before reincarnation loop soul agreements and negative karma.
And that is to be in touch with who your real soul is, basically.
Yeah, like who is Victoria's soul without the generational stuff from my family or the past lives where I've been close but not quite there? And what does the pure crystalline expression of what my spirit look like? And now I finally feel like I'm getting there. Whereas before it was like, I'm trying to push through the weeds of my story, my conditioning, my family. I always feel like I'm being pulled back, but I know I have a big mission. Now it feels like my path feels natural, feels clearer, feels more regenerative and a little less 2-step forwards, 10-step, 2-step, 10-step.
Makes sense. You do a ceremony called the Great Merge.
Yeah.
Please tell us about that.
So I have been now just completing my 6th Great Merge ceremony. And the Great Merge is a global healing event. So light workers from all over the world who are called particularly to help Earth ascend. So anyone who is awake or knows who they are might know that Earth is going through quite a significant evolutionary shift at this time. And those that are really called to helping this Earth, they say, I want to join the Great Merge. And what the Great Merge is in layman's terms is an entirely channeled experience where I channel an extraterrestrial being that I've been working with since 2023, so 2 years now. And he is a Syrian being that is here to help Earth heal. And so I channel this being who talks about Earth's evolution, how Earth works, different ancient civilizations, how different civilizations and humanity has fallen, and what our role is as healers, psychics, light workers, those who have awakened. And then we take all that channeled information. He tells us where we need to go on planet Earth. So we were just in Hawaii like a week ago. And we go there with all that information, really powerful light workers, usually during particular times in Earth's energy, usually transits. So if there is really powerful astrological energy, if there is like 8/8 portal, like, August 8th, 2025, when there's power in the energy, we go to these particular locations and we go to perform healing work for the planet. So global light work, global energy work is what I lead.
What does that entail?
Well, this most recent one I can speak to because each great merge is different because what the world needs is different. I channeled all history that was pertinent for this great merge about Atlantis, Lemuria, Babylon, and Egypt, and why those 4 civilizations in human history fell.
Why did they fall?
Well, each of them were different. Lemuria fell because they had a connection to their heart, but were infiltrated from the inside out by negatively oriented extraterrestrials. They didn't have discernment, in short. Atlantis evolved their consciousness, but lost their body altogether. They wanted to overcome the limitation of the body. And so again, they got hijacked by interdimensional or extraterrestrial life forms from the inside out. Mostly through false light teachings, trainings, people who thought they were channeling different beings but weren't. And then creating consent and allowing attack. With Babylon, this was really where the hierarchical ruler structures came from. People over-glorified, overpowered, and really over-worshipped rulers. And because of that, they fell to their own demise. Same thing, over-validating something outside of them, not listening to their own inherent wisdom, thus creating a collapse. And then finally with Egypt, similar but a little bit different, more so connected to having very, very harsh terrain to overcome and relying on external deities or relying on external worshiping pieces, people, things like that, that ultimately, again, disconnected them from their own intuition. So as you can see, Julie, there's a connection here about having access, but what they did with it was not sovereign, discerning, and ultimately not sustainable. And so I took all of that information, and then what we did is we took that information and spread it over 4 ceremonies. We each, together, for each of the ceremonies, represented one civilization. So I'll give you the example of Lemuria for this particular conversation. I put them into a geometrical position, all 7 of the lightworkers who joined me, and I stood in the center. From there, I believe in psychic protection. It's how I work, especially when I'm dealing with very intense information that's connected to Earth's Akashic field. And so I protect everybody's energy in a golden bubble, and then I open up the core of the Earth. So basically, I'm opening up the information in the core of the Earth, directly connected with the intention of Lemuria. In this case, the main thing that was troubling Lemuria was that they were embodied, but they didn't have discernment. And so I pull up that energy out of the core of the Earth. These souls are also helping me pull up that information because they're all very psychic. And then I release that energy to the outer, in this case for this great merge, through the outer atmosphere of Earth's infrastructure. Basically taking that energy that needs to be released from the center of Earth and then releasing it. From there, of course, we have to set that energy, seal it and close it so that new information for Earth, such as having discernment, being connected to your own intuition, yes, of course, embodiment, yes, of course, evolution, but also being able to recognize false light, being able to recognize deceptive forces, not benevolent sources, and being able to be equipped to be able to navigate it. So we set that new energy into Earth's core and then close it and seal it. So quite a lot of advanced light work, but we did that for each of the major civilizations based on what we've channeled. And then that completes what the Great Merge is. So each merge is unique to what the planet needs. Each merge is unique to the time human evolution is in and what is the most beneficial for ultimately Earth to have as many sustainable awakened souls as possible.
What do you say to people who challenge the thought that Atlantis and/or Lemuria ever existed? There are many people that believe that they did exist, especially in our community in the woo-woo space. I mean, I think it's very believed. And yet in other schools of thought, people are going, what? There's no trace of it. There's no actual substantial research that's been done that shows that they ever existed. Did they really exist, or were they existing in a different reality?
Yeah. I think to that point, I am such a firm believer that when people are meant to know truth, if they're meant to know truth, they will. And if not, their reality will be constructed around whatever that truth is for them. And so I would rather whoever's listening to this, who's like, oh, I actually don't resonate, don't believe that that's real, go for it. Like, that is your reality. I completely understand autonomy, choice, free will, and that reality will be constructed around that truth. For me, in my experience, I have evidence of it based on what I've channeled, based on what I've seen, different past lives where I've been a part of the Atlantean culture. I have evidence that makes sense based on my reality. If you have evidence of the contrary, I think it's important to give people that opportunity to say, hey, especially in the work that we do, it's like there's so much that we can do in terms of building credibility, but at some point, you can be 100% accurate and someone will receive 0% of it. And you can be 100% accurate and someone will receive 100%. And so ultimately, the truth, if ultimate truth is meant to change my mind, I'm open to it. And if it's meant to help change theirs, I'm also open to it. But ultimately, I think it's better if someone doesn't believe than to let them.
I agree, 100%. It's rare in the 30 years I've been doing this work, Victoria, that somebody has said to me, you have to prove that to me. And my response is, well, really, I don't. If you want to talk about it, I'm happy to talk to you about it. If you want to talk about the weather or football or the best restaurant you've eaten in town or whatever, I'm happy to talk about that too. But I feel it's really important for us to have that option. And I think you so beautifully stated that option of, hey, if you want to talk about it, great. If you don't, that's fine too. Whatever works for you is fine with me. When you talk about the earth is shifting, can you tell us more about that? How is it shifting and what do you believe is happening?
So I believe that this is one of the few times, maybe only times of that I cannot say with 100% accuracy is true because I don't have that information yet. But my personal belief right now is this is one of the only times that we have remembered that we are waking up, which is different than we are waking up. Because if we study history, ancient civilizations, it's pretty clear that we were evolving. Of course, there's been trajectory in terms of technology access. Of course, that has definitely evolved. But it seems that we've always been connected to something, or certainly searching for some sort of connection. And that's just evolved as we've evolved, but we've still been evolving an extraordinary amount based on what we've had access to. And so I don't know that what we're experiencing is necessarily, in terms of evolution, much different than history has shown us. I think the only main difference that makes this time so much more empowering is that we're aware that we're aware. Instead of just waking up blindly, getting infiltrated from the inside out, or waking up and not even knowing, now we're aware of the fact that we are waking up, which means that we have so much more choice and we have so much more decision, and we can choose what awakening looks like to us. And that's kind of what I feel is the energy nuance of the time that we're in. Is that when we wake up, we're like, oh, I'm awake, instead of, well, if you don't know that you were asleep, then how do you know the difference between waking up and being asleep? Everything would just be what is.
I agree. I have just a couple more questions as we're winding down here. I could talk to you all day. What what do our guides do when we're too afraid to listen to what they're suggesting or act on the messages that they're sending?
Yeah. So my understanding of how a benevolent guide can work with you, because some guides are not serving the highest good. And that can happen for many reasons, but I'm going to speak particularly around your benevolent teams of spirit that are here to help you positively get on whatever path you're meant to be on, to experience your natural blessings on blessings. They will mostly communicate through physical signs, synchronicities, and totems. So noticing the dime on the ground, noticing the way that the sun is peeking through and creating an orb on your face in a photo, noticing how you get, oh, my clock just says 555. Perfect example.
There you go.
555, right? I'm talking about spirit. I'm talking about my guides, and I see 555. The way that they communicate is through magic, through signs and synchronicities, and those physical tools, similar to the tarot and the oracle. They're, when used not as a dependency, but used as a confirmation, they become powerful allies to help you go, oh, I asked for 555 and I just saw it when I was on a call with Julie Ryan. Holy crap, right? And when you can start to ask, right? So you can say, if I'm on the right track, can I see a dime today? I'm open to receive, right? Because it's a two-part sequence, in my opinion. You send out and then you let go. Not I send out and then I'm looking on the ground like, where's that dime? Oh my God, it's 5 o'clock already. I don't have the dime. Like, it's not that. It's I'm open to receive when it's the right timing. Next thing you know, you're just about to get in the car. You found a last-minute parking spot. Coincidence? You get out of the car and there's a dime. So that confirmation came through a natural timing. And that's one of those moments where you can go, oh, my guides are communicating with me. Now, my opinion on benevolent guides as well is they don't impede on your free will. So if I said, I never want to communicate with my guides again, they won't communicate with me again until I choose of my own free will that I would like to connect with my spirit guides. And so let's say I do choose to communicate with my spirit guides, then I'm open to receive. I'm open to receive them in physical totems. And I want them to show me in my life so clearly. I love to say, show me that I'm on the right path and make it so obvious I can't miss it. Because then now it starts to get fun. Because if I said make it obvious, and they're going to start to make it obvious. And again, one of those moments where I'm starting to understand the language of magic, which is really just real. But we call it magic because we don't know how to explain it. Right? What else is magic other than a trick that we can't explain? So we experience the magic, and then that helps us build our confidence with this amazing universe that literally moves through vibration and ultimately like and not like and not like. Like, it's just this way of connecting with something that brings resolve, peace, and hope. And one of the best ways you can do that with your guides is starting to ask specific confirmations, being open to receive, letting go, really important. And then pro tip, ask for something really obvious and say, make it so crazy that I cannot miss it. And then you'll laugh and it'll help you amplify your confidence and trust in the universe, which of course is so helpful on your path.
I concur on everything that you say. They want to be helpful. They want us to make requests. I teach that it's important to be really specific for what you want, and then to be open to how you receive it. You may see a dime on the ground. You may see a dime in a magazine ad. You may see a dime in a cash register. You may just be open to how it goes. And I've heard about it a bazillion times from spirit too. They don't care how many times they send us those thoughts. Time doesn't exist in the spirit world. They think it's fun watching our adventures.
Yes.
Whether we're suffering or not, it's just an experience to them.
Agreed.
And when we are suffering, it's been my experience where they'll say, and I'd love to hear your take on this, they'll say, well, wow, how's Victoria going to get out of this situation? It's going to be fun to watch her create what her next move's going to be. And whereas we may be stuck in the horror, and certainly in our human perspective, we have horrific things that some of us experience. But in the spirit realm, they were going, whoa, what's she going to do next? This is really exciting. Go get the popcorn. Not that they eat popcorn in heaven. Can you describe what it feels like? What's it feel like to be in true alignment? And how can somebody know that they're there?
Yes, that's a great question. Thank you for asking. I think emotion feels very high or very low. Very high, very low. It's very indicative of many things. Your external environment, your hormones, the people around you, really like Mother Nature has her way and hormones play a role in our emotions. And so that's not truth. That's just up, down, here, there, who knows? Like it's kind of subjective to what we're experiencing at any given moment. Whereas truth feels, I like to explain, I feel it in my sternum. I feel it connected to my sternum. Some people feel it in their heart. Whatever feels right for you, but it feels like yes. And it kind of drops in and it looks like the road gets really clear. So when a good example is if you're going to make a decision about something, let's say it's a big decision, a life change, let's say you're going to relocate. If it is the right decision, it will feel like yes. It'll feel clear, like a road just got cleared. I like to say the fog lifts and it just feels like there's a clear path and it feels absolute. This is the next decision. This is right. And then you usually have a response about that. Oh, well, it's expensive and I got to move. And that's where the emotion part comes in. But the truth feels like, yes, this is what's right. And so emotion is one thing, up and down and kind of all over the map. You don't want to make your biggest decisions from an emotional place. You want to wait. Wait until the path feels clear and you'll know it. I like to make some of my biggest decisions when my energy feels really clear and in very unpredictable places. So instead of like making it this whole ceremony where I'm like lighting the sage and getting everything together and trying to make this whole thing of it, wait till the road feels clear. Today I made a big investment while I was waiting for my fiance to come back with some food. It was like purchase payment because the road was clear. And you'll feel it because it feels right. Truth to me feels right. Emotions feel unprecedented, unpredictable, and definitely wavering. And so how do you stay in alignment with that? To the point about blocking your intuition and meditating and working on creating stillness, find those continued still points in your day. If you think you don't have time for 5 minutes, you need to make time for 10. You know that saying? It's like if you don't think you have time for 10, you need to make 20 minutes. Like give yourself those little touch points of, hey, how are you doing, Julie? How you doing, Victoria? I'm just going to be here right now. And through that slowing down, then ultimately you can feel those truths because your intuition never left you. You just abandoned it. You just forgot how to hear it, and life just kind of clouded it. So more stillness will help you feel that natural alignment where it feels right, safe, just, and true.
Beautiful. Last question. Why do we incarnate?
Oh, why you gotta leave me with such a loaded question, Julie? Can I just sing Belle again?
Girl, you are welcome to sing whatever you want. Yeah. Snow White, Cinderella, whatever.
I love it. Well, why do we incarnate? I believe that each soul has a unique reason for that. Truly, I do. I think each soul is different. Each soul wants to experience itself in a different expression. And I think a part of it is play. I think a part of it is deep healing on a soul level. I think a part of it is to be free and to heal whatever is blocking us from being free. I think Earth is such a beautiful, very intricate, third dimensional reality where the gift is forgetting, but the prize is that you can wake up. And the even greater prize is that in this lifetime, you get to be aware of the fact that you're waking up. And whatever that brings you, I believe you are meant in some way to experience what home feels like for you as a soul. Whether that's just enjoying your time here where you can use your 5 senses, experience mortality, experience emotion, and be really happy and content with that. Whether it's to serve a global mission and to teach people that we are spirit in a body. whether it's to bring forward a big mission in bridging the realms, or you're just simply here to be a garbage man and never remember that in a past life you were a king. I think every path is beautiful and unique in that ultimately, I think the highest path is to be free as a soul and to clear those interferences. And if you forget and you don't wake up in this life, I also think that's a gift, because in some way that's helping you heal something.
Beautifully stated. You're extraordinary. My goodness. Wow. You are so wise and so eloquent and so talented and so tuned in with your own spirituality at such a young age. I just am so impressed.
Thank you
with
so
you
much.
and with the work that you're doing and how you're helping not only the world from a physical standpoint, but the humans on the world that are in the world and living in the world and on the world right now. How can people learn more about you and your work?
Well, first, I just have to say thank you so much. I look up to women like you who have been doing this work. I mean, I can't rush my timing. I can't be older faster, and I don't want to be, but to be among a woman who has done such extraordinary work for 2.5 decades more than me, I just want to say thank you for your service as well. And just know that I look up to how embodied you are and how empowered you are. And I look forward to continuing to become that kind of woman in the world. So I just needed to say that as well, that,
Thank you.
I just love what you're doing, and I'm very thankful to be in a room with you, knowing my place as someone who's still growing, of course, but also just appreciating being among someone who's been doing it for much longer, and it shows in the way that you lead. So thank you for your service.
You are most welcome. Thank you for those kind comments.
Of course. Finding me, right, yes. So you can find me mostly on my website, which is Victoria Pippo, Pippo, inc.com. My website has all that good stuff. Also, I'm really active on Instagram. Same, Victoria Pippo is a great way to find me. And then honestly, ask for a sign to find Victoria Pippo and say you're so open to receive. And then maybe you'll find me on your explore page. And then you'll go, wow, my spirit guides were real. So you can try that one if you want.
Perfect. I love it. Everybody, you have a lot of material to think about from this conversation. And while you're doing that, just know we're sending you lots of love from Sweet Home, Alabama, mwah, and from Vancouver to where Victoria is. We'll see you next time. Bye, everybody. To enhance your spiritual journey, click on one of the videos below and remember to subscribe, leave a comment, and share this episode with your family and friends.